The morning my husband left wearing a black suit, he kissed my forehead, smiled, and told me he had an early business meeting in downtown Chicago. I believed every word, until I noticed a single white rose resting on the passenger seat of his car. Ethan had never bought flowers. Not for birthdays, anniversaries, or Valentine's Day. Something felt terribly wrong. 20 minutes later, I made a decision that would change my marriage forever. I grabbed my keys and followed him. I expected him to arrive at a corporate office. Instead, he drove through the gates of a quiet cemetery where dozens of mourners dressed in black stood beside an open grave. My husband stepped out, picked up the white rose, and slowly walked toward a funeral he had never told me about. My name is Claire, and after 12 years of marriage, I thought I knew every chapter of Ethan's life. We had built a peaceful home in the suburbs of Chicago, shared every milestone, and promised never to keep life-changing secrets from each other. But as I watched him disappear into the crowd of grieving strangers, I realized my husband had just opened a door to a past I had never even known existed. And before that funeral ended, I would discover a truth that would change everything I believed about the man I married. I stayed several steps behind the mourners, hoping Ethan wouldn't notice me. The air was cold, and the sound of church bells echoed across the cemetery as everyone gathered around the casket. My heart pounded when Ethan walked to the front, gently placed the white rose on the polished wood, and lowered his head. A few seconds later, a young woman rushed toward him with tears streaming down her face. She wrapped her arms around him, and instead of pulling away, Ethan hugged her tightly. I had never seen that woman before. Was she a relative? Or someone he had hidden from me for years? Every terrible possibility raced through my mind. As the funeral service continued, the minister invited the young woman to speak. Fighting back tears, she looked at Ethan and quietly said, "Thank you for keeping your promise to my father." Ethan closed his eyes as if those words had broken something inside him. Confused, I moved closer until I noticed the framed photograph beside the casket. The man lying in that coffin looked almost exactly like my husband. Before I could understand how that was possible, an elderly woman gently touched my arm and whispered, "Claire, Ethan has been waiting his whole life for this day." I looked at the elderly woman in confusion. "What do you mean?" I asked. She gave me a gentle smile but didn't answer. Instead, she pointed toward the framed photograph beside the casket. I slowly stepped closer, and the moment I saw it, I felt my knees weaken. The man in the picture had Ethan's dark hair, blue eyes, and unmistakable smile. They looked so alike they could have been twins. My mind searched for an explanation, but none of it made sense. Ethan had never mentioned a brother, a cousin, or anyone who even resembled him. Had he been hiding an entire family from me all these years? Before I could gather my thoughts, the young woman approached and quietly introduced herself. "My name is Emily," she said. "You must be Claire." I nodded, stunned that she already knew who I was. Emily reached into her purse and handed me an old, faded photograph. It showed two teenage boys standing side by side with their arms around each other. One was Ethan. The other was the man in the coffin. Written on the back were 6 chilling words: "Brothers forever, until fate tore us apart." Just then I heard Ethan's voice behind me. Pale and shaken, he looked into my eyes and whispered, "Claire, I can explain everything, but we have to leave now." Without another word, Ethan gently took my hand and led me away from the crowd. We didn't stop until we reached the far corner of the cemetery, where no one else could hear us. He finally looked at me with tears in his eyes. "His name was David," he whispered. "He was my older brother. 20 years ago, everyone believed he died in a house fire. I buried that pain a long time ago, until I received a letter 3 days ago telling me he had been alive all this time." Before I could ask another question, Emily hurried toward us carrying a sealed envelope. "David asked me to give you this after the funeral," she said quietly, placing it into Ethan's trembling hands. Ethan slowly opened the envelope and unfolded a handwritten letter. As he read the first few lines, the color drained from his face. Without saying a word, he handed me the last page. My eyes stopped on one sentence written in shaky handwriting. "If you're reading this, they finally found me. And now they'll come for you next." At that exact moment, the sound of tires screeching across the cemetery parking lot shattered the silence. A black SUV came to a sudden stop, and two men in dark suits stepped out. One of them looked directly at Ethan, pointed in our direction, and shouted, "Don't let him leave." Ethan grabbed my hand, and we ran toward the car before the men in black suits could reach us. He didn't say a single word until we were miles away from the cemetery. Instead of driving home, he headed into downtown Chicago and parked outside an old private bank. "David left me more than a letter," he said quietly, holding up a small brass key. "He told me this key opens something that explains everything." Minutes later, a bank manager led us through thick steel security doors into an underground vault. He stopped in front of safe deposit box 317, unlocked it with his master key, and stepped back. "Your brother instructed us to release this only to you," he said before leaving us alone. Ethan slowly opened the box. Inside was a sealed manila envelope, a flash drive, and another handwritten note. He unfolded the note with trembling hands. The message was short but terrifying. "The evidence inside can destroy powerful people. Trust no one. Once this box is opened, they'll know exactly where you are." Before either of us could react, every light inside the vault suddenly went dark. Red emergency lights flickered on, and the massive steel vault door slammed shut with a deafening bang. Then from somewhere outside we heard slow footsteps approaching, followed by the sound of someone unlocking the door. I froze as the armed men slowly surrounded us. Ethan stepped in front of me, protecting me without hesitation. The leader held out his hand. "Give me the flash drive," he ordered. Ethan shook his head. "David gave his life to protect this evidence. I'm not letting you destroy it." The man smiled coldly before pulling out a pistol. "Then your wife dies first." My heart stopped. Before anyone could move, the elderly bank manager suddenly threw a metal cart into one of the attackers, creating enough confusion for Ethan to grab my hand. We ran through a narrow maintenance hallway behind the vault as bullets echoed against the concrete walls. We finally reached a locked emergency exit. Ethan pulled the brass key from his pocket, but it didn't fit. Then he noticed tiny letters carved into the wall beside the door. "Look behind the frame." He removed a loose metal panel and discovered another small key hidden inside. The door clicked open, leading us into an abandoned underground train tunnel. We had barely taken a few steps when a loud voice echoed through the darkness. "Don't shoot!" someone shouted. A man wearing an FBI jacket slowly stepped into the light with his hands raised. Looking directly at Ethan, he said, "We've been trying to protect your brother for 20 years. But someone inside the FBI betrayed us." The heavy vault door slowly opened, but it wasn't the men from the cemetery standing outside. It was the same elderly bank manager. His face had turned pale. "You don't have much time," he whispered. "Someone disabled our security system 30 seconds ago. Whatever David left you, take it and leave now." Ethan immediately plugged the flash drive into a small computer inside the vault. A video began playing. David appeared on the screen, exhausted and bruised, constantly glancing over his shoulder. "Ethan," he said, "if you're watching this, they finally caught up with me. Dad didn't die because of an accident." He uncovered financial records exposing a powerful criminal organization. "I've spent 20 years protecting the evidence they couldn't find. Now it's your turn to finish what he started." The video suddenly froze. Every monitor inside the vault turned black before a single message appeared in bright white letters. "Access detected." A loud security alarm echoed through the underground room. The bank manager looked toward the entrance in horror. "They're already here," he whispered. Before we could move, 3 armed men dressed in black suits walked calmly through the vault door. The man in front smiled coldly as he looked at Ethan. "Thank you for opening the box for us," he said. "Now hand over the evidence, or your wife dies first." Writing.